Welcome to the Be Empowered podcast with your host, Graham Hopkins. My goal is to help you regain your power by bridging the gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are. In simple language, that is like making your childhood dreams come true. This is for those who want to make an impact in their lives but don't know how to get there. Be ensured, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. So welcome everybody to the Be Empowered show. I'm your host, Graham Hopkins. Today we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Susan Campbell from California. And Susan is the author of 11 books. She's just finished co-authoring a book with John Gray called The 5-Minute Repair or 5-Minute Relationship Repair, which is just a wonderful read. And as Susan will tell you, it's probably just not the reading, it's the applying that's important with this book. And that's certainly the way that I found it. So Susan, welcome to the Be Empowered show. It's a great honour to have you with us.
Thank you, Greg.
So, Susan, this show is mainly about how we feel connected with our own truth. And, of course, we all go through our ups and downs in life. And I was just wondering, can you remember a time when you actually felt disconnected, and then tell us how you reconnected to your higher truth?
Well, when you ask me that question, I think of, on one level, I've always felt connected to my higher truth. I was just the kind of kid that was admired, and the adults saw something in me. I was very wise as a child. I won't go into a lot of detail, but everyone seemed to seek me out, even starting in kindergarten, and so that's one level of higher truth. But then my personal truth of just knowing what I want and taking action on it and being really aligned with my own personal wants and needs, I definitely fell out of that during a 10-year marriage, where I'll just say I kind of got addicted to being adored and gave up a lot of my own will. I just gave him all my money, and he became kind of a compulsive gambler. It's in the stock market, not in gambling per se, and we finally ended the marriage. And right after that, I wrote the book, Getting Real, 10 Truth Skills You Need to Live an Authentic Life. And it's all about how I just completely lost connection with what my own voice was. And I actually had to leave that relationship to get it back.
Okay, that's interesting. So, can you tell us a little bit about Getting Real? Just the main points to the book.
The main points to the book, Getting Real, have to do with how we're all conditioned to manage other people's reactions to us. I call it the addiction to control. Most human conversations have a lot to do managing whether somebody thinks well of you, whether they're going to be upset with you, whether they're going to leave you, stop paying you, whatever it is. But we're very vigilant managing whether we're going to get not our real needs met, but kind of pseudo needs, the need to stay within your own comfort zone. So I teach in the book, Getting Real, 10 truth skills to help you connect more deeply with your present felt experience. And so there's tools for staying connected to your presence. It's really a book about presence.
Okay. So when you say felt experience, you're talking about experience in the present moment, are you?
Yes.
Okay. So moving on from there, how did you get involved in writing this book, 5-Minute Relationship Repair?
Well, I've been a couples counselor for 45 years, and I I guess it was back in the 80s. You know, it was actually when I was married to this man, I got a lot of insight, and I was counseling couples too. I got a lot of insight into how emotional triggers wreak havoc with your adult relationships. People will see like a look on somebody's face, and they'll interpret that as that person is my foe, not my friend, and that's the person that they're married to. And for example, or that's somebody who they're very much in love with in some other way. And that's because the brain has misinterpreted the cue and thinks that that's a threat to their survival. And so I began to see that with my ex-husband, how if I would talk too long to somebody, he would get jealous. You know, that was the main issue there, was a jealousy trigger, and start accusing me of things. And so I began to be very, very interested in watching how my other couples, besides myself, would go through these triggering episodes, and your higher brain is just offline when you're triggered, and you're making up stories. The brain just makes up stories to make it think that it knows what's going on, you know, to get a sense of control again. So I saw how unfortunate this was, that couples who loved each other very much were falling out of sync and breaking up because of these emotional triggers. And so I was going to write a book back in 1980, What to Do When Your Buttons Get Pushed. I never wrote that book, but here it is now. And I met John Gray as a friend, and we started talking about collaborating, and he'd been working on a similar book. So that's how this thing got together. This was about 3 years ago that we started working on this, and I feel it's much better for having the two of us as authors.
So what was John's involvement in the writing of this book?
Well, he already had a manuscript on this same subject, and so did I. We already had written 2 books. And he's particularly interested in brain science and how that eliminates the fact that people automatically feel that their survival is threatened. And he brought in a lot of the brain science part of our book. That kind of takes the blame out of the fact that people get triggered, because we can't help it. Our nervous system is wired to scan for danger, one part of our nervous system. Of course, we need to have it wired up with the other part of our nervous system that says, "You're safe, honey. This will be over soon. If you just breathe and get present again, maybe you'll be able to say what you really feel and know." So we teach people ways to pause and calm themselves when the triggering episode has happened.
Well, it seems to me in reading this book that your combination with John, it's almost like you've come together and created the perfect coherence.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very happy with it. We're getting great comments about it too.
So can you give us a little bit of insight into how one would go about repairing their relationship in regards to the material you have in your book?
Okay. In the book, there are a number of worksheets. Well, first, you have to learn what triggering is. So the book takes you. It's a real primer in what to do when your buttons get pushed and how to dissect a triggering episode so you know when it's happening. So the first thing we teach couples is it's normal to get triggered, and here's the brain science behind it, so that you can start watching for when your heart rate starts to go up or when your mind starts to make up stories. So we teach people, like, we can ask our viewers right now, think of some time when you felt angry about something that somebody else did, where you were kind of like offended, you took it personally, that kind of a thing. And what goes on in your nervous system? Different people have different reactions. Some people are not even aware of the early warning signals, like a hot face or clenched fists or something like that, rapid breathing. So that's the first step, is to accept the fact that you're probably going to get triggered when old insecurities are kind of re-stimulated. So there's really a lot of steps to this before I can answer how do you repair, because you have to know all these steps to analyze the triggering episode. So we ask you then to look at what was stimulus. Was it somebody rolling their eyes, or was it something the person actually said? So like bring yourself back to that triggering episode, and what was the story that went off in your mind? Like, I'm not important to that person, or I can never get it right with this person, or oh, I'm not good enough. A lot of times the stories don't come out on that level yet, Graham. They don't come out that vulnerable. They often come out as, geez, I can never do anything right. What's wrong with her? You know, they come out kind of judgmental. So when you see those judgmental stories, those are, of course, times to pause and know that you're triggered. So learn the early warning signals of triggering. That's the first step for repair, because you have to stop doing more damage to each other by going, whoa, I'm triggered, or you see signals that your partner's triggered. And so the next step is teach couples to create a pause agreement when the triggering starts happening, so they don't keep talking. Because all the stuff you're going to say after you're triggered is going to be accusations, defenses. It's not your true feelings and your true needs.
I love the analogy that you make regarding the hole, what you call the hole. And you say, if you want to get out of the hole, stop digging.
Stop digging. Yeah, right. It's like, so you have to call for a pause, because if you keep talking, you're going to go deeper and deeper into the hole. So we teach couples about the hole. So then pause is the first step in learning to manage triggers. But before you even can do the next, well, then calm yourself. So then we teach calming tools. A lot of them are meditation techniques or breathing techniques, yogic techniques that been around over the centuries. And we brought a few of those in and said, you know, try a few of these, see which one works best for you. So after you pause, and of course that's an agreed upon, this is very important, that the couple has agreed upon a signal that they will use whenever either person's triggered, and they have to agree on this in advance. And the agreement is both people will stop even if just one person says pause. So that's a big deal, because they have to have a conversation about it, and something that, a word that they will really remember when the heat is on. So we're on the calming step now. Pause, calm. So you get yourself relaxed and ready to listen again. You've reassured yourself that we're going to get through this. We've been through this before. And the repair process involves having already gone through. There's a repair process that takes less than 5 minutes. It's like a 1-minute process where you fill in a script that says, I'd like to repair what happened when I walked out while you were talking, let's say, or when I fill in the blank. When I saw that, I was triggered. A fear came up in me that I'm not important to you. And so you speak, and then you ask for the reassurance that you are important to the person. It has a few more details than that. You might say sometimes it reminded me of the times when I was sitting at the dinner table and nobody listened to what I had to say. And so I got flashbacks of that. And I'm sorry that, and you might say, I'm sorry that I said whatever I said in response to that, or maybe some name calling or whatever reactive behavior you did. And you basically say, if I could take it back, here's what I would have told you, and that I was hurt and that I needed to feel like I really mattered to you, and I would have asked for reassurance. It's so that it ends with a vulnerable expression of need. And the needs that we teach people about, so there's a lot of pre-work in order to be able to fill out this repair statement. We teach people about are called in the attachment literature, the psychology literature of attachment, your core needs. And those are needs like loving attention, to feel like you matter to the person, like this person cares about you. You know, just the same core needs that like a baby needs when they're growing up. So it's very similar to just feel safe and close. Not all the time, but to be able to have that connected feeling between yourself and your loved one. So there's a lot of pre-work where you have to, in order to be able to fill in those blanks without using judgments and labels, you know, in order to be able to go, this was my reactive behavior. And reactive behaviors are things like walking out, eye rolling, criticizing. So we teach people to see, okay, these are your reactive behaviors. And so you fill in the blank with whatever your reactive behavior was. Like that's what you're going to apologize for or try to take back. And then we have core needs, which is another thing you assess your own core needs with one of our worksheets. And so you're pretty well, by the time you get to using this fill in the blank repair statement, you're pretty well educated about your own inner landscape of emotions and reactions. So it's like there's a lot of pre-work. Before you can do it in 5 minutes, it might take 2 or 3 hours to go through these worksheets, either by yourself or with a partner.
Can we go back and talk about what's happening in the brain and why it's so important to calm ourselves down?
Yeah. There's a survival. The brain has different parts to it. There's the higher brain, which is the part of the brain that's able to reason and think through things and kind of slow you down. But there's the primitive part of the brain, and in the primitive part of the brain, sometimes it's called the reptilian brain, the hind brain, there's a center called the amygdala, and in the amygdala, brain scientists have discovered, or what they call a survival alarm system. Basically, it is in the amygdala that these reactions go off, where in early times when we maybe had predators around like lions and tigers, anything off in the shadows that looked like a tiger, it was just a shadow of something, and it could have been your friend, but your brain would register danger. And so in early humans, we go back to early humans. In early humans, as the brain was developing, prior to how well it's developed now, how much we've evolved, we had to make mistakes sometimes in order to not be eaten by that tiger. Anything that even vaguely resembled a tiger set off a danger alarm in our system, and we'd start running for our life or something. So we still have that part of the brain in us today, that part that's scanning to see danger, and it's kind of biased towards seeing danger. Anything that appears to be a threat to our survival now is a disconnection from the one we depend on, like the one we depend on in quotes, like our loved one. So anytime there's anything that's a perceived disconnection from the one we depend on, it's sort of like that shadow of the tiger off in the distance. The alarm system goes off automatically, and nobody intends this, but you feel all those fear chemicals, and you go into something like fight, flight, or freeze. So this is a nervous system event. It's not like you chose to do this, but once that happens, then other parts of the brain get going, trying to explain why you're upset. And a lot of times they make up the wrong story because they make it a blaming of the other person, or they make it a I'm not good enough. They make up stories that have nothing to do with reality. And so that is something that happens. And the stronger the wiring between the higher brain and the more primitive part of the brain, the more quickly we can reassure ourselves, that's not a tiger. My partner is not my enemy. He's my friend. The better connectivity we have between those brain centers, the more we can what psychologists and biologists call co-regulate ourselves. We can actually reassure ourselves, like a good nurturing parent, that, hey, we're safe. And it takes a millisecond, for that instant reassurance to happen in human beings who have good wiring between their two brain centers. But those of us who were not nurtured very well, and there's degrees of that, the degree to which you didn't get your childhood needs met, your child development is affected by how well you were touched, protected, given eye contact and soothing voice tones. So if you don't get those good bonding kind of experiences with a caregiver, your brain isn't wired as strongly between, the connections aren't as strong between the part of your brain that reassures safety and the part of the brain that says, danger, danger. And so in our technology here of relationship healing, like mutual healing, we show couples how to offer those co-regulating behaviors to one another and also to oneself, soothing voice tones, loving touch, that sort of thing, as they're doing this repair process. And that actually will rewire, to some extent, your brain so that connectivity between the higher brain and the primitive brain is stronger. Even, like I'm in my 70s, even now with my partner, we're still working on this stuff. We're both in our 70s, we're still doing these tools. They're still relevant, even though I've been working on personal development since I was in my early 20s. It's a lifetime project and we're enjoying it. But there's this healing aspect to the repair process when we do these co-regulating behaviors. So your brain actually does change.
So, Susan, where do you believe these triggering mechanisms are held within our body? Do you believe that they are in our subconscious mind?
Well, yeah. They're definitely fear stories and like faulty learning. So we learned the wrong thing a lot of times about how to assess reality, or even about how to make sense of our own emotions when we're kids. Like sometimes what we learn is if we cry or act needy, the adults are annoyed and they'll think we're a pest. So a lot of us grow up with the mistaken assumption that if I have any emotional pain going on, somebody's wrong. I'm wrong for having a pain feeling, or somebody did something horrible to me and so they're wrong. So it's like somebody has to be to blame. This is the result of faulty learning, where when you're a kid, where you thought, gee, it's not okay to feel emotional pain, or it's not okay to express emotional needs. So that's one example of our conditioning. See, what the whole program here is to get free of your conditioning, of all these false beliefs that I'm not okay, or being in emotional pain is not okay. That's that particular false belief. It's one that I think is the most important, is that emotional pain is something bad or wrong, because if we embrace the feelings as they come up, and there's an exercise, a very detailed exercise in our book called Compassionate Self-Inquiry. If we embrace my current emotional pain around what my partner just said to me or did, if I feel that pain, we guide people to actually feel the pain, so that that will come up with some of these old faulty memories, this conditioning that's harbored in our subconscious mind, all these ideas and beliefs about how the world works. And so we encounter a memory, or maybe several memories, we keep going, where we learned that we were not okay, or our needs were not okay, or to cry is not okay, where we learned the wrong thing, faulty conditioning. So we get in touch with that through this self-inquiry process, and treat that little wounded kid a different way by bringing some just loving attention, not making a big deal out of it, just I'm here, I hear you. It's like you listening to yourself. So we have a process where, in a sense, by being guided through the steps in the self-inquiry process, you come to be a more spacious present for whatever arises in your emotions, including emotional pain. But emotional pain seems to be the hardest for people, so that's why I'm focusing on that. You know, we're conditioned, and now we subconsciously believe that we're wrong if we feel pain. So you can correct that through reconnecting with when you learned that to some degree. I mean, the memories are faulty, and you don't need to remember exactly the first time you learned something. It's not about that. It's about bringing a new kind of attention to something. So this is like relearning and retraining your subconscious to have more accurate map of reality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe that's a long answer. Yeah, I believe the false beliefs that lead to triggers reside in the subconscious based on faulty learning or childhood conditioning.
So would you and John say that our subconscious mind is, well, what I'm trying to get at is where are these memories held? Are they held within the cells of our body, or is it a function of the brain? What do you believe
I don't
it
really
is?
have any belief about where exactly in the body or in the psyche. I don't have a map of where they're held.
Okay.
We call it the subconscious mind, the unconscious. It's the whole conditioned mind. It's a phenomenon of being human at this stage of evolution, that we have all these conditioned ideas and beliefs. I don't have a model of where that is.
Okay.
Other than it's unconscious or it's the ego mind. I have labels for it, but I wouldn't have anything to offer there.
Cool. So how do you see that there's a difference between the brain and the mind?
Well, there's the brain is a nerve. Yes, for sure. Brain is part of your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's physiological.
Yep.
The mind, there's different minds. There's the ego mind. There's the higher mind. There's different levels of mind. So yeah, there's differences.
So basically what you're saying is that when we stop and calm ourselves, we then have the ability to be able to reconnect with our higher mind. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And when each partner becomes more conscious, then we have the opportunity to go back into relationship and connect with each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whole process of going through the worksheets that lead to effective repair. As you work through these processes, you're going to become more conscious of your unconscious patterns and more free of those.
Mm. So your the strategies that you have in your book, the practical application, enables people to become more aware, doesn't it?
Right. This is kind of a curriculum for presence, for awareness, and for working with the things that are most difficult that arise within awareness. That usually, we have the term resisting what is. The what is that most people resist is some form of discomfort, emotional discomfort.
Okay. So you talk about your core needs, and then you talk about your core fears. What are the core fears?
Core fears refer to things like the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being criticized, being controlled, being neglected. Those are that's the vocabulary of core fears. And we help people not just think about, I have a fear of rejection, and that's kind of a label, but what is the fear underneath the fear of rejection? Like, I'm afraid that I'm not loved or I'm not lovable, those kind of things. Or if it's a fear of abandonment, I'm afraid I'm all alone. And these things are ego fears now. I mean, we have to give the ego its due here in this human journey and learn how to like comfort the ego. The ego is just like that wounded child. The ego has core needs for attachment, and it's based on some kind of valid survival needs. Human beings do need touch and love at every age. Most of us, anyway.
Mm.
And you two questions. You said, what are core fears? And then you said, what are core needs? I think it was a two-part question.
No, we've already talked about the core needs at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's what core fears are.
Cool.
And they are part of that conditioned mind where we learned the wrong thing in childhood. That's where they come from. They come from faulty learning that I'm not okay, that I'm not good enough, things like that.
So have you got any insight into what creates these core needs and core fears in the first place?
Well, the core needs are you're kind of born with.
Yeah.
It's what beings need to thrive. Things that I said. But core fears, what creates those are being neglected, abused, abandoned by your early caregivers, those sorts of things. So anything that looks like neglect, abuse, or abandonment. Again, it might not be real abandonment. It might be my mother had to go to the hospital to have my brother when I was 3 years old, and I felt abandoned. But those are the things that create these core fears. Early experiences where you actually felt like, as a child, maybe it wasn't conscious, but you felt like your core needs weren't being met, and they actually weren't. However, let's not blame parents here. Life happens. A parent's not going to meet every one of the child's needs. It's just not humanly possible. So we all are going to grow up with some form of pain around trying to get our needs met. And some of us deal better with that than others. But a lot of that, how well we deal with it, is to some degree based on what we did get. I mean, if you got mostly good nurturing parenting and you got occasional abandonment and neglect, then I'm going to have a button about being rejected or abandoned, but it's not going to have as big of a grip on me as if I was raised in an orphanage and never touched, for example.
So you talk about the reason that we get triggered in a relationship is because of the stories that we paint in our mind. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, the actual reason is a nervous system event. Our nervous system has perceived danger, and there's no story there. But as soon as the nervous system starts going wacky, the mind comes in and says, well, it's sort of like, why am I afraid? I mean, there's actually research that shows that your brain makes stuff up. I mean, not your brain, but your storytelling part of your brain. We call it the storytelling brain. That's one part of the brain. It makes up stories so that you can kind of, apparently, this is my theory, so that you can kind of feel like you know what's going on. A little bit of sense of control here, and to name, like my nervous system's going haywire. It's like part of the function of the ego mind, is to help us navigate the world and be comfortable in the world as it is, even if our maps are a little bit inaccurate. The ego still has a job to do, and so it does its job sort of, not perfectly, and it makes up these stories to help us feel more comfortable, but the stories are not accurate a lot of the time. I mean, they're not ever accurate when you're triggered. They may feel like the most true, the things that happen when you're most emotionally activated feel the most true, and they're really the most false. Yeah.
You talk about co-triggering is inevitable, co-regulation is a choice.
Uh-huh.
That's an interesting statement. Can you tell us more about that, Susan?
Sure. Um, Co-triggering means that when my partner starts to get agitated, or maybe I hear a little different tone of voice or something, we're wired together. If we've been together a little bit of time, we're really attuned to each other on a subconscious level, and I can pick it up. It's like my nervous system is in communication with his nervous system, and if his is agitated, mine's going to be agitated. We're part of this field, and so you can't just say, "Honey, I see you're triggered," because you can tell by my tone of voice I'm triggered too by that time. So you're almost always both triggered once one person gets triggered. So that's what co-triggering means. And co-regulation means how we calm our partner's nervous system to help your partner feel safe again, to get that connection between their higher brain and their survival alarm part of the brain again. Because actually, by looking at your partner, if I see that scary energy from my partner, and I realize I'm triggered, for example, and maybe I can get my higher brain back online really quickly. In fact, I've learned to do that, Graham. I quickly feel that, I feel this anxiety, agitation. I know that it's some kind of a loss of connection with the one I love. I can feel it. I can feel empathy and tenderness toward that little baby who didn't get picked up as an infant. And I do all that in a split second, and I'm back. Then I've made kind of peace with myself and loved myself. And I say, "Honey, you look like you need a hug, do you?" Something like that. I offer co-regulation. That's what co-regulation is. It's offering touch, soothing voice tones, eye contact that's friendly, those kind of behaviors. And by the way, those things that calm down your partner's upset nervous system are the very same things that infants need from their early caregivers to create this strong wiring in their brains.
Excellent. So, Susan, my wife is called Susan too, and she's going to love this book. So I'm about halfway through this book, and this is one book I'm going to apply. So what I'd like to do is continue reading it, go back and apply it with my wife, Susan, and then come back to you for another interview at a later stage where we can talk about how it's changed my life.
That's great. And remember, on the website, 5minuterelationshiprepair.com website, you can download all the worksheets for free. You can get a free workbook there, because you're going to need to use that repair statement, that one-page repair statement with the fill-in-the-blanks things you're supposed to say to do a good repair. You're going to need to use that over and over.
Tell me, where do you get 5-minute relationship repair? What's the significance of the title?
We thought it sounded good.
Okay.
I mean, we're all about repair, and we're all about doing repair quickly. I mean, those two things are absolute, values and scientific fact, that if you don't repair quickly, you build up these fear stories about your partner that aren't so easy to erase. So we knew it had to say something about repair and quickly, but 5-minute relationship repair said that in a more elegant way.
Well, to me, it's where I can see that it's 5 minutes is that it's actually nipping this whole destructive behavior in the butt quickly, isn't it?
That's it right there.
So
that's such a good life skill. Whether you're in a relationship or not, if you have that life skill to go, whoops, I'm triggered, pause, calm myself, do this self-inquiry process that I began to describe, it's a very useful book for anyone, even if you're not partnered. You'll be, maybe you'll be more ready or available to be partnered once you've healed some of these things.
How do you find that this changes your energy on a personal basis? I mean, obviously when you're with a loved one and you're starting to trigger, then there has to be a dynamic of energy that's changing too.
Well, when I calm myself, that makes my energy more spacious again. When I'm triggered, my energy is like it's like being completely absorbed with a fear that is based on no reality really. And so calming myself down definitely changes my sense of connection to what's around me too. Because when we're calm and spacious, we can see the world from more points of view and feel just generally more connected. That's that other kind of connected that I was talking about in the beginning, where connected to all, and just the world is a friendly place. So that's a kind of energy that I feel that I carry with me most of the time. I mean, I go into a room and I feel at home everywhere. Some people feel fearful everywhere. How sad. But we can heal ourselves using these practices. But like you said in the very beginning, it's not a book to read, it's a book to practice. If you just read a book on yoga and throw it away, you didn't learn yoga, and this is a yoga of relationship.
Yeah. Tell me, do you use EFT? Do you use the tapping or anything like that?
I believe it's a good practice, but I don't use it.
Okay. So this basically works regardless of anything physical outside of, say, meditation. So
You'll have to ask that question again.
You're probably having difficulty with my Australian accent, are you?
No, I just didn't understand what you meant.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that you don't have to apply anything physical outside of what you're recommending in this book to calm yourself down.
Right.
That's wonderful. So what would you, as we close up here, is there anything that you could recommend for a couple who are really struggling in this area of relationship and they're triggering each other? What would you recommend that they do to begin, other than buying your book?
That would be the short answer, but the more detailed answer would be, first, learn to accept that you have triggers. I think that is the biggest thing to overcome. People are ashamed. They're still ashamed when they have emotional pain or big fears. They're ashamed because they know these fears. Most of the people I work with or I know, they know these fears are unrealistic, but they still have them and they still run by them. So it's like we need to accept the fact that this triggering mechanism is kind of built into our human organism at this stage in our evolution, and we're here to learn and grow and really mine the shadow, the unconscious parts, so that we can bring them up to consciousness. And the very first and most important step is to just accept that these triggers are going to happen, and they are doorways to knowing yourself better and to making all that unconscious material conscious, so you don't fear it anymore. It's like, just like loving all your parts. That's sort of the practice that we're talking about here.
So
knowing and loving all your parts, especially the rejected parts, like the part that's in pain.
Yeah. So would you say that somebody needs to love themselves before they can love somebody else?
No, I wouldn't, because we all love ourselves imperfectly. And if we waited until we totally loved ourselves, we'd all be very lonely. I prefer to say, you probably have to love yourself to some degree before you can even believe anyone else would love you.
Yeah.
So that's an inside job. But from there, get in a relationship and muck around, because that's the way you're going to heal. But learn some practices that keep you on track rather than just a chaotic relationship where nobody's going to get any benefit out of it other than maybe, a companion.
Yeah. Well, Suzanne, it's been a delight to be able to talk to you. As I say, this is the best book that I've ever read on relationships because it's so practical. So thank you so much. I know you're pressured for time, and I really appreciate connecting with you, Susan. And I'd like to thank our audience for watching the Be Empowered show. And can we just have your website where people can find you again, Susan?
The website for the book is the title of the book,
Mm-hmm.
5minuterelationshiprepair.com, and it's 5, F-I-V-E. And then my website for contacting me about coaching or that sort of thing is susancampbell.com.
Excellent. And those of you who are interested in maybe leaving a review on iTunes, that would be much appreciated. And my website is www.beempoweredgroup.com. I'd like to thank everybody, and both Susan and I wish you all the very best for the future in your relationships. Goodbye.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Be Empowered podcast. For more on regaining your power by bridging that gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are, go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and enter your name and email address to receive a free ebook and get notified of any upcoming podcasts. Remember, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. Changing your energy transforms your life.